The Democrats have a lot of items on their Remake America wish list. They have tax hikes, a huge expansion of government, of course, killing oil and gas, got to do that, critical race theory. But through it all, they have one overriding priority, and that's holding on to power. Now, many months ago, the Angle told you that the Biden administration wouldn't do anything to deter the massive flow of migrants into the country until they were forced to. And it took a group of 12,000 Haitians camping out under a bridge in Del Rio, Texas, to begin to get the Democrats' attention. Now, the scenes are so disturbing, they can't be kept from the public.
There are still thousands of migrants living in this makeshift camp. The conditions are brutal. It's incredibly hot out here, and this border crisis is only getting worse.
We see the shocking scene under the Del Rio International Bridge. Thousands of migrants, mostly Haitians, say officials, living in squalor.
The hospital is at the brink of being overwhelmed because the EMS calls coming from under the bridge just don't stop. Since Thursday, 10 babies have been delivered.
Everyone was rightly horrified by the scenes at the Kabul airport, remember, just a few weeks back? And the shocking scenes you just saw, remember, those are happening right here at home. The White House knows Biden's numbers are cratering, right? And the reasons aren't just limited to Afghanistan and things like high gas prices. The border is a huge part of it. So they needed to do something to turn things around, which explains why the Biden administration is suddenly sounding tougher on the border.
If you come to the United States illegally, you will be returned. Your journey will not succeed. This administration is committed to developing safe, orderly, and humane pathways for migration. But this is not the way to do it.
Wait a second. Where was that guy in February? Because for 8.5 months now, Mayorkas was more focused on avoiding the word crisis than solving this problem. And that's because they wanted to move as many illegals into the United States as quickly as they could. And that's because the DHS secretary and Biden's keepers actually do believe that borders, at their essence, are immoral. So when they say they're against illegal immigration, that means nothing. For most of the year, anytime the border issue was raised, these people would punt the question. They would say things like, every administration has its challenges on the border, or the numbers weren't really that out of the ordinary. And my personal favorite line was, oh, Secretary Harris is engaged in getting regular briefings. That was really reassuring. But now the fact is, they know 2022 is right around the corner, and they're facing multiple crises weighing them down. So they need to take a political weapon away from Republicans. A border's a huge one, let's face it. And of course, the regime media, as I'm now calling them, which had been dutifully downplaying the border crisis for months, is now stepping up to help burnish Biden's reputation as tough on immigration. Check out this NPR headline of all places. The Biden administration is fighting in court to keep a Trump-era immigration policy.
Title 42 is not an immigration authority, but a public health authority to protect the American public, to protect the communities along the border, and to protect the migrants themselves.
But apparently it only applies to Haitians. What? No, Trump smartly used Title 42 to keep millions out of the country starting in March 2020. But Biden came in and he gutted that rule, exempting families and unaccompanied children from expulsion. Some adults were expelled, but many were not. Now they're relying on this same regulation again to help them with the political nightmare that they have on their hands and that they themselves created. But look, before you get all excited about how many of the 12,000 Haitians they're actually going to deport, as of earlier today, officials say just over 300 have been removed on flights to Haiti. Of course, that's just a drop in the bucket. Now, our own Bill Melugin reported tonight that many of those gathered under the bridge will, in fact, eventually be released into the United States. They're going to join untold hundreds of thousands of others who have already been released into the interior U.S. by Joe Biden. Now, after they get a few headlines about the deportations and stanching the political bleeding, Mayorkas will return to business as usual at the border. This entire thing is and always has been a scam. And I also blame Republicans on the Hill for not having addressed this issue in Trump's first 100 days in office. They could have. Under no circumstances must they fall for the Democrats' border bait and switch here, because the implicit threat from the Dems is to they'll let the border crisis continue until Republicans cave to their demands for mass amnesty. Now, I want you to listen closely to this next clip. It's from Open Borders zealot, New Mexico Senator Ben Ray Lujan.
The border is not open. It's important that there is also a humanitarian response here. Make no mistake, there's a broken immigration system. The numbers are higher now than they have been, but it also shows the violence that families are fleeing. We need to take on this broken immigration system in the country, but also address the root cause of immigration.
Oh my God, he lost me at the border's not open. Now, Biden's subversion of U.S. immigration law is a direct assault on American sovereignty. We missed this in the conversation. His scrapping the most effective aspects of Trump's immigration policies led directly to this current crisis. And think about it. Severe economic, severe national security, severe political and health-related consequences for American citizens. It's all on Joe Biden. Every crime they commit, every tax dollar they consume, every disease that is spread, every cartel member that's enriched, all of it is on Joe Biden. Which brings us to why the Democrats kept hyping that phony right-wing rally on Saturday. Stay with me, this is related. Now, unlike the southern border, where they denied the crisis and refused to deploy necessary resources, somehow in Washington on Saturday, they deployed massive resources for a non-existent crisis. They only found one goofball in a fur hat to interview.
He's pushing him back with an open hand. He's not even moving his hand quickly. That's not assault, no.
So you don't think what they're doing is an assault?
He could easily back up.
That's a police officer.
Yeah, he could easily back up.
So it's the officers.
No, this is not assault.
This is like a Davy Crockett costume party or something. I don't know what that was. Of course, they're never going to admit it, but Pelosi and Schumer were disappointed that the crowd was so small. There was no violence. The whole thing looked absolutely ridiculous. Like the rise, kind of the resistance ride at Disney, stormtroopers and all. Who knows how much money all of it cost? Well, not that any of these thieves care, because they've been robbing the American people blind for so long on programs that don't work, it's second nature to them at this point. Now, for much of this year, it has felt like America is being held hostage by an incompetent White House, fear-mongering public health officials, and radical extremists who despise us and our values. They want us to believe that unless we cede to their demands, their rules, their edicts, their orders, that we won't have any freedom or any peace. But now they're exposed. And we know they do not care about the average American. In fact, they loathe the average American. And you know the old saying, never negotiate with hostage takers. And that's the angle.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.